todos.
Good afternoon, everybody. The informal meeting of the Commission for Social Development is called to order. This meeting is held using remote simultaneous interpretation. I kindly ask participants to be mindful of the additional difficulties experienced by interpreters when working remotely, and of the increased likelihood of disruptions to the audio feed to the interpreters. Participants may select the preferred language to hear the interpretation, or choose the none option to hear the original language of the speaker. Speakers will not be able to unmute their microphones or engage their video until given the floor. If you face audio or visual issues during the meeting, please use the Restart All Lines button, which is above the microphone icon. For technical support, should this problem persist, please reload your browser. For technical support, you may also send a private message to the moderator of the platform. May I remind delegates that the interactive dialogues serve to pose questions and to make comments directed at the presenters. The delivery of written statements is strongly discouraged. I would request that interventions be brief and concise, and any questions to the presenter be made at the start of the intervention, as the microphones will be automatically muted when the allotted speaking time has elapsed. Thank you very much for heeding these suggestions. We will move now to item 3. I invite the Commission to turn to agenda item 3, entitled Follow-up to the World Summit for Social Development and the 24th Special Session of the General Assembly, to hold a high-level panel discussion on its sub-item A, entitled Priority Theme, Socially Just Transition Towards Sustainable Development, the Role of Digital Technologies on Social Development and Well-being of All. I'm pleased to open this panel, and as chair, I would like to make a few comments on this panel issue. Digital technologies have been crucial for the functioning of our economy and society during this COVID-19 pandemic. This is undeniable. The networks and communications infrastructure are being used increasingly and more intensively for educational, production, health and relationship reasons, as well as for leisure. Progress, which we felt was going to take a long time to happen, has happened over just a few months. In this regard, the inclusion as a way of being and a way of belonging to virtual societies has been, this is very much to do with the ability to adapt digital transformations and relationships between peoples and states and other stakeholders, and how they all react to these changes. Given the changes underway, the pandemic and the lockdown meant that we had to seek new ways of continuing social and civil practices through digital platforms. Against this backdrop, it's crucial to assess this virtual citizenry, linked to the active participation of our citizens in various areas of society and economy, so that they can benefit from these innovations and ensure that these innovations are distributed justly and fairly. Therefore, colleagues, the context of this pandemic has shown us even more clearly the benefits of the uses of digital technologies, both in economic and social fields. However, we have also seen that these benefits are not within the reach of all. The digital divide is very big. This also has consequences on the new ways of measuring poverty. The basic basket must hold, as Eklak was saying, must include digital inclusion. Challenges linked to decreasing the digital divide and promoting digital inclusion will be just some of the aspects to be addressed during this segment. And I hope that this will be rich in exchanges of opinions, policies and experiences. Having said that, I am pleased to welcome the distinguished panelists for our high-level panel discussion this afternoon. Her Excellency Karen Dinen, Minister for Information and Communication Technologies of Colombia. Her Excellency Ana Mendes Godinho, Minister of Labour, Solidarity and Social Security of Portugal. Her Excellency Sylvana Vargas, Minister of Development and Social Inclusion of Peru. Mr. Boris Zurcher, Head of the Labour Directorate of the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, the Federal Department of Economics, Education and Research of Switzerland, and Ms. Elsa Marie de Silva, Founder and CEO of the Red Dot Foundation and President of Red Dot Foundation Global. I'm also pleased to welcome the moderator, Ms. Maria Francesca Spatolisano, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. To begin this high-level panel discussion on the priority theme, I had the pleasure of welcoming the distinguished keynote speaker, Mr. Peter Major, Chair of the 24th session of the United Nations Commission for Science and Technology for Development. So I now invite Mr. Major to address the Commission. Mr. Major, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Maria del Carmen Squef, Chair of the 59th session of the Commission for Social Development, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to participate at the 59th session of the Commission for Social Development and to give some remarks before its panel discussion on the priority theme, socially just transition towards sustainable development, the role of digital technologies on social development and well-being for all. The United Nations Secretary General's Sustainable Development Goals Report 2020 assesses the status of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The report brings together the latest data to show us that before the COVID-19 pandemic, progress remained uneven, and we are not on track to meet the goals by 2030. At the start of this decade of action to deliver the SDGs, the Secretary General calls, I quote, for renewed ambition, mobilization, leadership, and collective action, not just to beat COVID-19, but to recover better, together winning the race against climate change, decisively tackling poverty and inequality, truly empowering all women and girls, and creating more inclusive and equitable societies everywhere. Madam Chair, it is widely accepted that the digital technologies have a critical role to play in implementing the 2030 Agenda towards inclusive, just, and sustainable societies. They have already shown great potential for improving people's lives and protecting the planet, ranging from the use of mobile phones for inclusive finance to the drone delivery of medical supplies to remote communities, for example, in some developing countries. A recent notable example is the application of artificial intelligence, AI, and big data during the COVID-19 pandemic for fast-tracking the development of vaccines, monitoring the outbreak, tracing cases of disease, predicting its evolution, assessing infection risks. The world currently is witnessing two waves of digital transformation. One is the digital revolution of Web 2.0 technologies that allow people to create and share web content, to collaborate and communicate. This wave is at its peak. It has already affected most developed countries' sectors and has made good headways in the higher income developing countries. We have now seen a big push for digitalization and e-commerce in lower income developing countries. These are all signs of the Web 2.0 digital revolution's further deployment now reaching the global south. The other technological wave is AI, robotics, Internet of Things, IoT. Other technologies associated with Industry 4.0. This wave is at its initial stage in the technology revolution paradigm. For many people in low-income countries, AI and robots are things of a distant future because they are still mostly living in the beginning of the previous technological revolution. Therefore, countries should be concerned with the deployment of Web 2.0 technologies, but also take advantage of the new technologies revolution were possible. Countries should also set priorities to drive the digital transformation by developing and matching digital innovation strength to social and business needs to address emerging opportunities and market developments. Policies to benefit a country from digital transformation are context-specific. For example, upper middle income countries may design and implement policies with a focus more on emerging Industry 4.0 and cybersecurity sectors, and direct the deployment of digital infrastructure and development of skills to that. LDCs may prioritize the deployment of Web 2.0 paradigm and the digital upgrade of value chains related to garments, and that will reflect in the development of other areas such as infrastructure, skills, entrepreneurship, and finance. But they should consider how to take advantage of the next digital technological revolution. At the same time, we must be clear that technology is only a tool. Poverty, hunger, disparities in all dimensions, such as gender, education, and health, and environmental challenges such as climate change are all extremely complex issues that digital technology alone cannot guarantee to find a solution to. There is a need to identify the root causes for these issues and then give a role to digital technologies to play in fixing them. Exchanging successes and even failures among countries and learning from each other have proven to be useful for countries to find ways and means appropriate to their local situations. The Commission on Science and Technology for Development, CSTD, plays a critical role in this aspect. The CSTD is the focal point for the United Nations of Science and Technology and Innovation, STI, for development, including digital technologies, with mandate and expertise to articulate the critical role of STI and information and communication technologies, ICT, as enablers of the SDGs, and to inform and advise the United Nations General Assembly, the ECOSOC, the HLPF, and other relevant forums such as the Commission for Social Development. At its 24th session, to be held on 17th to the 21st May, the CSTD will address two priority themes. Theme 1, using science, technology, and innovation to close the gap on SDG 3 on good health and well-being. Theme 2, harnessing blockchain for sustainable development prospects and challenges. In addition, the CSTD will also, as usual, review the progress made in the implementation of the World Summit on the Information Society, WSIS, outcomes, as the CSTD acts as focal point for the United Nations system-wide follow-up to the WSIS with its core principles and action lines agreed by the international community. Under all the three items, the issues of inclusiveness and equity will be discussed. 15 years have passed since the international community set out its WSIS vision of a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society. Much has happened since then. Access to ICTs, which is so fundamental in a digital era, has grown much more rapidly than access to other essential services, such as electricity and sanitation. But it is not rapid enough to ensure that everybody can benefit. Madam Chair, as you may recall, last week His Excellency, Ambassador Munir Akram, President of ECOSOC, convened a Bureau meeting with the participation of the chairs of the functional commissions, the expert groups and other subsidiary bodies of the ECOSOC, with the view to enhance cooperation among these bodies. It is essential that the various commissions of ECOSOC strengthen collaboration among them, including by featuring their work in each other's sessions. As chair of the CSTD, I am glad that we are moving in this direction, which is exemplified by my participation in this high-level discussion. And let me take the opportunity to extend my invitation to you, Madam, Chair of this Commission on Social Development, to participate in the 24th session of CSTD in May. CSTD welcomes all commissions to share their work at the CSTD. This will benefit the UN member states, and they will be able to gather the interplay among recommendations put forward by different ECOSOC commissions, and hence make informed and holistic decisions in designing and setting their national policies for inclusive and equitable growth. It is our hope that the COVID-19 pandemic will prompt the international community into action for scaling science and technology, including digital technology solutions, in a way that will bring benefits to all people. We need member states to unite in solidarity to build an inclusive path for the achievements of the 2030 Agenda and ensure that everyone, especially the poorest, can benefit from the ingenuity of science and technology. Madam Chair, I wish a fruitful discussion and a successful meeting of your Commission. Thank you.
Caso. Ahora sí. Hola. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
I thank Mr. Major for his statement. We wanted to see a motivational video for this part, and I think this is probably the right time to see it now. Once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Major for his words. And if there are any questions for afterwards, perhaps you could stay with us for those. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Amine.
Thank you very much, Amine. Thank you very much for showing that video, which do show the 3 or 4 basic principles for achieving inclusion and the efforts we need to make to achieve that. I would now like to turn the meeting over to the moderator, Ms. Spatolisano, to conduct the proceedings of the panel discussion on the priority theme, and I look forward to a productive and interesting exchange of views. Before I hand over the floor, I wish to remind the keynote speaker to please keep to their time limit of 10 minutes and the panelists to 7 minutes per presentation. Ms. Batalisano, over to you. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you very much, Ambassador Square. I'm delighted to moderate this high-level panel today. As you know, this high-level panel discussion is an integral part of the Commission's deliberations to assess progress in the implementation of the commitments of the I hope you have heard my thank to you, Ambassador Square, and I will start again just in case. As you know, this high-level panel discussion is an integral part of the Commission's deliberation to assess progress in the implementation of the commitments of the World Summit for Social Development. Within its mandate, this Commission will provide policy guidance based on discussions and sharing of national experiences to promote sustainable, inclusive, and resilient development for all. The outcome of this panel, together with that of the general discussion and the anticipated resolution on the priority theme, will contribute to the work of ECOSOC and the high-level political forum, the HLPF, to be held in July. Now, the recovery, as you said, from the COVID-19 crisis is an opportunity we must seize to reset economic and social policies if we want to foster shared prosperity and provide equal opportunities for all. This entails rethinking economic activity, not as an end in itself, but rather as means for sustainability and advancement of human well-being and capability. The COVID-19 crisis has also accelerated the pace of digital transformation. Information and communication technologies have already brought tremendous benefits to social economic development and improved the quality of life for many. Yet, the crisis risks widening the digital divide, further exacerbating existing inequalities and creating even new ones. We have now the opportunity to shape the recovery, so to promote a transition to sustainable development that is inclusive, equitable, and resilient. Digital technologies can facilitate this transition for the well-being of all. This panel discussion will seek to identify and address existing barriers to a socially just transition towards sustainable development at the global, regional, and national levels. It will also aim to deepen our understanding of the benefits, opportunities, and potential risks brought by the accelerated pace of digital transformation. It will shed light on the determinants of the digital divide and draw attention to policies aimed at promoting the digital inclusion of vulnerable populations, such as people living in poverty, in rural and remote areas, women and girls, older persons, indigenous peoples, and persons with disabilities. With this introduction, let me do a little housekeeping now. After the presentation of the panelists, the floor will be open for the participants, the member states, regional and sub-regional organizations, UN entities, members of the NGO Committee for Social Development, for questions and comments, of course. So this interactive dialogue will allow for a sharing of experience and practical strategies. Before we begin the presentations, as you said, Madam Chair, I wish to remind our distinguished panelists to keep the allocated time if they scan of 7 minutes per presentation. And I apologize if I will have to interrupt them at a certain moment, but I hope this will not be the case. Thanks to their kind cooperation, we will have therefore more space for a real exchange with the floor. I think I can now proceed to invite the first panelist, Her Excellency Karen Abudinen, Minister for Information and Communication Technologies of Colombia. You have the floor, Minister.
Invitación a todos los.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to express gratitude for having invited us to this panel. And I want to greet you all and say that what we're doing in Colombia for a just social transition towards sustainable development, but also we're looking at how this technological development is leading to social well-being and development. So on behalf of the panel, I'm delighted to be here because technologies and connectivity are allowing citizens in Colombia to have opportunities. There are all these services in this country now getting to the doors of their own homes through this connectivity and technology. And I would like to give a few important figures that we have been developing so as to try to accelerate this connectivity during the pandemic. Firstly, we have connected almost 300,000 households from strata 1 and 2 at around $8,000 per month, around $2 per family per month with unlimited internet so that they can use that as much as they want. And this is high-speed internet as well. This has been very important because some of these families have thus been able to have their children study remotely. And they wouldn't have been able to do this had we not accelerated and supported this connectivity. It would have been much more difficult for them. Many of these families are also using this to work. They have not lost their jobs, again thanks to this program. And we want to continue reactivating the economy because we know that all issues linked to technology are today fundamental for development and reactivating the economy. I also wanted to say that we are now ready with this process of connecting almost 15,000 households. Or schools, I apologize, as the speaker, 15,000 schools. That is around 42% of schools in the remotest areas, where there's almost no optic cable. But our solutions are alternative solutions now, such as having panels, antenna, or building antenna and masts in that place so that these schools can be connected. And the most important thing for us is to achieve this in such a short amount of time. So we want to be ready by connecting households and schools, but we want to expand this further throughout the country. We have made a great deal of effort, but there is still a long way to go. And so we had a spectrum auction where 3,558 antennae will be placed this year. We have almost 1,000 already by May, and we're talking with the operators so that the next 1,000 can be installed by May 2022. And this is a real acceleration. This is part of what we want to do, everything we want to do in order to achieve sustainable cities, but also families who know that thanks to technology, they can resolve problems in their lives. They can use technology as well to give themselves a boost so that they continue work, their children can continue studying, they can go on to university, join the electronic world and so on, due to connectivity. And throughout the country, we are intending to provide thousands of cell phones and chips so that universities and university students can be permanently connected and united together in research, learning. Because for us, for the government of President Duque, education plays the most important role. And we know that this ministry must be at the service of the education of Colombia, because without technology and connectivity, today we will not be able to continue making progress. And we want to be at the service of all the micro-enterprises in this country as well. Those are the two main issues that we are looking at with regard to connectivity. President Duque has also set a challenge for us. And I tell you now that we want to make Colombia into the Latin American Silicon Valley. And to do this, I'd like to take a few moments to talk about our three actions: digital talent, businesses, and the state. So digital talent. We are training 100,000 programmers in our country, 50,000 for 2021, and the others in 2022. Which means that all the businesses and companies in this country will have programming talent available. And this is fundamental to revolutionize Latin American countries in talent, training, and support for businesses, both private and public. Because we're moving towards this transformation. We are working with data scientists, and we're training children in programming logic. We're trying to reach 1 million children with that. And we're also working so that 300,000 people from 10th and 11th grade in our schools will also be able to have software developed through their curriculums. This has been fully accepted by us, and it's the talent section I was talking about. Moving on to businesses. We have decided that 100,000 entrepreneurs, small and medium businesses, including the informal sector, will be supported by us. We will help the informal businesses to formalize through platforms which will allow them to continue selling their products, and we will help them in digital marketing and online shops and websites. We're also looking at micro, small and medium enterprises who hadn't dared to undertake their own digital transformation, and they have their passion, knowledge and promotion, and we have helped them to move forward with this. And a piece of good news is that many of them have increased their business in this way. And for each entrepreneur, we have their starting point and a mission for them, a goal. This is to encourage ourselves, of course, but so that the entrepreneurs themselves make every effort to try and achieve higher effectiveness throughout the process and higher productivity. We're also working using a kind of soundbox so that public businesses can develop projects based on big data. And we're trying to reduce all the state bureaucracy and administration. We have passed a law on that and we're implementing it now. And we're also trying to ensure that we have our citizen portfolio available so that all Colombians can undergo all of this administration and red tape through a digital folder, digital portfolio. They can do the whole thing digitally, including the contracts. It's easy for governments and citizens to have access to this. And this is what's crucial for us. And so I want to conclude with this. We are working with passion and knowledge, but we're trying to think about economic reactivation and closing gaps, and above all, on well-being for all. Because well-being doesn't just go from top downwards, but from the bottom upwards as well. And we want to ensure that this has a fundamental role in the government of President Duque. So this is the broad outline of what we've been doing, and we are now more committed than ever to technology and connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Señora Ministro. A very impressive program. I would like now to invite the next speaker. That is His Excellency Mr. Boris Zurker, the head of the Labor Directorate at the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs in the Federal Department of Economic Education and Research of Switzerland. You have the floor, sir. I hope the video and audio will be soon connected.
Okay.
Yes, there you are. Welcome.
Permettez-moi tout d'abord de remercier le...
Allow me to begin by thanking DESA for having invited me to today's event and for having convened the 59th session of the Commission for Social Development. Given that I represent the Labor Directorate of Switzerland within the Department of Economic Affairs, I will primarily focus my statement on labor issues and allow me to share a few points with you from the perspective of Switzerland. When it comes to the labor market, an examination of the last 10 years shows that we possess a high degree of adaptability. By international standards, Switzerland stands out through its high level of participation in the labor market, a below average unemployment rate, and higher quality of employment. In various professional areas, structural changes over the past 10 years have, however, led to a decrease in the number of jobs. However, those changes have also generated new employment opportunities in other areas. Indeed, over these last 10 years, we have seen the net number of employed persons in Switzerland increase by 10%. Various analyses show that employment is increasingly shifting towards knowledge-intensive industries that require advanced qualifications. Changes within sectors and occupations themselves are even more pronounced. Technological progress is creating new jobs and new fields of economic activity that require new skills. So far, employees have managed to respond to the increased requirements in skills by constantly improving their qualifications. Now, to move on to the coronavirus crisis. This crisis had led to an acceleration of digitization. The degree to which this current trend will continue in the future still has yet to be confirmed. As indicated in the SG's report, access to new technologies continues to fail to be universal, which is a problem. In Switzerland, our key goal is to ensuring the maximum possible level of participation in the labor force, as well as high-quality employment, including in the digital age. We believe that the essential factors for successfully managing structural changes are stable economic conditions, flexible market regulation, together with a smoothly functioning social partnership, and finally, and above all, an active labor market policy. Digitization and accessibility are at the heart of the Swiss inclusion policy, and in the context of its foreign policy, Switzerland also is specifically focused on international cooperation. It seeks to ensure that particularly vulnerable population groups have access to public services. And above all, Switzerland is committed to open access and to access to information. It positions International Geneva as a hub of digital governance. What is essential for the future is aligning education even closer with the skills that will be required by the digital economy. Lifelong learning and continuous education have yet to increase in importance and must do so. The ILO Centenary Declaration on the Future of Work places a particular emphasis on skills development. For this, dialogue with social partners is key in order to support the digital transformation process, and the same applies to managing the current crisis. We have followed two principles that have helped us in managing this crisis. The first principle is that it is crucial to invest in social protection networks that do not exclude anyone. Our unemployment insurance, in addition to covering classic unemployment benefits, also has a provision for partial unemployment. Businesses who temporarily no longer have work can claim compensation for their employees. The employees thus are able to keep their jobs and the business avoids bankruptcy. This right to partial unemployment has been extended to new categories of workers, but also extended in time. Moreover, compensation for the loss of revenues by self-employed persons have also been introduced. And finally, the government has supported a number of sectors that were particularly affected, such as tourism and culture. With an already well-established social protection system, Switzerland was fortunate enough to not have to start from scratch. Rather, it was able to build on the system already in place. The second principle has been investing in social dialogue, which is essential. The Swiss government has intensified its discussions with stakeholders during the coronavirus crisis in order to ensure health and occupational safety, as well as health protection plans for various branches of the economy. High-level meetings are taking place weekly with social partners, and this will become a given in the future, perhaps. And finally, how do we overcome this global crisis of the labor market? One part of the answer is contained in the Centenary Declaration on the Future of Work, adopted in 2019 on the 100th anniversary of the International Labor Organization. That declaration commits us to ensuring protection for all workers, first. Second, promoting sustainable economic growth, full employment, and decent work for all. And finally, allowing everyone to benefit from changes in the world of work. In conclusion, the role of the state is to support transformation and to facilitate it by while working with social partners. Only the full cooperation of the entire international community will allow us to address the impacts of the pandemic. Together, we must do everything in our power so that this crisis finally in the outcome leads to a social model that is more sustainable, more just, and better able to adapt to future changes. The goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development must guide our action in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour ces remarques and for focusing on the future of work and what it means, this big change we are all undergoing. I now would like to turn to next speaker, Her Excellency Ms. Ana Mendes Godinho, the Minister of Labor, Solidarity and Social Security of Portugal, who is with us through a video message.
Dear Chair, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is with great honor that I address all the participants of the 59th session of the Commission for Social Development. Unfortunately, we are not yet able to meet in person, but I hope and I'm sure that next year we can all attend in the New York United Nations premises that so warmly welcomes us always. Portugal has, as you know, for a long time been actively contributing to the work of this Commission that we fully support. I welcome the report of the Secretary General on the priority theme of this Commission. I couldn't agree more when the Secretary General says, at its center, a socially just transition redirects policies, economic incentives, and all our strengths and all our activities towards building a more inclusive, equitable, resilient, and sustainable system, while, of course, protecting those who are negatively affected during this transition. With 10 years left to realize the goals of the 2030 Agenda, we are facing one of the biggest challenges of our history and of our lives, combating an invisible enemy, the pandemic COVID-19, and saving as many lives as possible. The persistence of poverty and unemployment and its foreseeable increase due to the COVID-19 require global and is the key to overcome the challenges that we all face. I believe of each country, of each region, will be easier if we base our future on climate and digital transitions. But if this recovery is to make our countries and our regions more sustainable and resilient, we must ensure that it is a fair recovery, which truly benefits all citizens and that leaves no one really behind. Therefore, poverty eradication must continue to be the major ambition of our societies and become a priority for any economy that aspires to be competitive and sustainable. In this process, digital and green transitions cannot reinforce social inequality. We must focus our strategies in 5 main pillars. First, maintaining and creating decent work and quality employment opportunities. Second, accelerate qualifications, new skills, upskilling, reskilling, so that our citizens are actors and not victims of these transitions. So that qualifications are the true social elevator that is needed and that can really cut the cycles of poverty. Third, strengthen social protection to ensure that systems are inclusive and that they are made for people and that they don't leave no one behind. Four, invest more in accessible innovation and technologies to strengthen the competitiveness of our societies and the access of real equal opportunities. Fifth, develop long-term social programs adapted to disadvantaged groups and societies by promoting digital real tools. One final word to wish you all a good working week. I hope that the debate over the following days will constitute an occasion to gain awareness and an opportunity to share good practices and experiences. This is a time of permanent challenges, but this is also the time of the opportunity to act and to transform what needs to be transformed and to accelerate what needs to be accelerated. Thank you for all your energy, your good vibe, and your work. See you soon.
Thank you, Minister Mendes Godinho. Your video came a little bit later but it came, and your message was anyway very loud and clear. Thank you very much for that. Now I proceed to the next speaker, Her Excellency Mrs. Sylvana Vargas, the Minister of Development and Social Inclusion of Peru. You have the floor, Madam Minister.
It is my pleasure to be here today. I will be speaking in Spanish, my native language, although what I would like to share with you is in English. I'll be showing that in a minute. Estoy muy de acuerdo.
I very much agree what we just heard about the huge challenge we are facing in terms of defining what it means to be sustainable. I think this applies to Agenda 2030, but also with regard to the spread of COVID-19 throughout our countries. It makes this into a true and unavoidable challenge. It's no longer an option. Therefore, artificial intelligence, robotics, and the digital transformation, as you were saying at the beginning, are here to stay. And they've arrived very quickly. We anticipated progress in this direction, but the pandemic has shown how necessary it is, how imperiously necessary it is to incorporate this into our ways of life, our strategies, and above all, the response that we can have at state level. In this regard, all of this has made it visible how many challenges we face, and Peru is no exception. I would like, just in the few minutes I have, to share with you now this afternoon, to share a few reflections about the work we've been doing in Peru, in the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion, about the relationship between social protection and digital transformation, and how this relationship is being built. This is not a fully formed relationship yet. We haven't finished our work. We are undergoing the process. We're in a transition. And we've been working on defining social inclusion in a way which involves skills building and building capacity amongst our people so they can independently make use of these technologies, whatever their situation. Against this backdrop, we are working in a policy framework based upon the whole of life. And we have 5 stages: child nutrition, early childhood development, childhood and adolescence, economic inclusion, and protection of older adults. And in each of these sections, we have numbers of policies and interventions, social programs, which are aligned with one another to achieve our results. But of course, these are intersectoral results. They're linked to other sectors and ministries as well. A real challenge we have in Peru at the moment is transitioning from a social protection focus to a territorial one, which doesn't impose a policy from top downwards, but includes all the territory and all its diversity. And this is where we find the digital transformation having such a crucial role. Allow me to speak a little bit about how, from the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion, we view the importance of this change that the pandemic has imposed upon us more than ever before. First of all, digital inclusion, where opportunities are provided through information communication technologies. This, as we all know, allows people to have timely access to social protection for people who historically had been excluded from these services. I'm talking about people living in the most remote areas, older people, women, young people, people with disabilities. And secondly, digital inclusion also facilitates access to more precise, exact information. This is not just about having rigorous information, but above all, information which allows us to make more timely and appropriate and socially relevant decisions. In this regard, we believe that social inclusion, based upon our experience in Peru, is a way of promoting human rights. Hence, our commitment to continue working in this direction. We've been working on a number of initiatives, and one of them I'd like to share with you this afternoon is an alliance, a partnership that the Ministry of Social Development and Social Inclusion established with the Ministry of Production in our country and the support of the Inter-American Development Bank, to have two major calls in 2017 and 2018. These calls aimed to promote initiatives to allow for social inclusion using technology and ICTs, and to allow a number of universities and the private sector and NGOs from civil society could present initiatives. And I would like to make a brief presentation of 4 main axes and 6 winning projects. And on the left of the screen, you can see 2 policy axes, which I mentioned during our political cycle at the beginning. We are looking at the whole of life. In 2017 and 2018, for example, these initiatives, for example, early childhood development, allowed us to finance 2 very important initiatives, and interesting initiatives, to allow for the rapid identification of anemia in children, for example, using telephones and artificial intelligence. And so as to by analysing ocular conjunctiva using smartphones. In 2018, the winning project allowed a water purification process. This in the remotest areas of the Amazon. Under economic inclusion, we have deployed 4 projects. In 2017, these provided innovative solutions to help people to deal with adverse conditions, climate conditions, particularly in the Andean area of our country, which led to real problems, particularly with their camelids, their livestock. These are alpacas and llamas, for example. Again, we use technology to help people to adapt to these adverse climate conditions. And finally, through economic inclusion, we can develop mechanisms to increase iron consumption amongst children, using similarly technological mechanisms. Finally, I think something fundamental in terms of social protection and digital inclusion something crucial here is governance. We are trying to increase knowledge and promote cooperation through our social innovation laboratory, and also cooperating with people on the ground, stakeholders on the ground, so that decision-making is more effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Minister, for your presentation. Now I would like to invite the last speaker in the panel, Ms. Elsa Marie da Silva, the founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation and the president of Red Dot Foundation Global.
Despite the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, that is Save Daughters, Educate Daughters campaign of the government of India, we still have a horrific sex ratio. Recent statistics for 2 of the states, Rajasthan and Andhra Pradesh, indicate that female births have declined to 806 per 1,000 male births. This skewed sex ratio indicates that girls are seen as a liability and a burden and impacts their status in society. In rural areas, education of girls is still not a priority. Many families deny girls an education because of poverty, violence, child labor, early marriage, abuse within and outside families, and lack of care and nutrition. Further, the education system is inefficient. Lack of teachers, lack of school buildings, electricity, toilets, infrastructure, and more. During COVID-19, education for all children moved online, and we were not prepared. Unfortunately, we have seen a large percentage of girls being disadvantaged and discriminated against because either they did not have access to digital devices or were not given preference to use them, or they didn't have access to the internet. The impact of the girls losing out on a year of education can only be assessed in the future. Unless we take a holistic and multi-perspective approach, which places the girls at the center of our policy design, we will not be able to solve this problem. In our work, we have come across girls who want to aspire for more. They want to be astronauts, police officers, doctors, and teachers. But in many homes, they are not allowed to pursue education beyond a point for a multitude of reasons. We have to change the way girls are perceived and build their confidence in themselves and in those around them. The 2030 agenda cannot be achieved without addressing the status of women. The 2018 McKinsey study points out that women's participation in the Indian labor force is at 25%, which is below average for its economic size. This was pre-COVID. During COVID, that number is much lower. Yet the study points out that if women were to equally participate in the labor force, India can add $770 billion to its GDP. So one must reflect on what is holding women back from achieving their potential. Some of the main reasons are lack of acknowledgement and pay for domestic work and childcare. Indian women carry out unpaid work at home for an average of 5.5 hours daily more than their male counterparts. And this further contributes to their perceived status as being secondary to men. During COVID, this has further worsened, with women being responsible for their children's education with little or no support. We are all aware of the shadow pandemic of gender-based violence, which has been exacerbated during COVID-19. The rates of domestic or intimate partner violence, online harassment, child abuse, and abuse of LGBTQ persons increased dramatically during lockdown. The National Commission for Women in India recorded a 94% increase in distress calls within the first 2 weeks of the lockdown being announced. With no access to transport or their own mobile or internet connectivity, women were trapped in their homes with their abusers. A home is supposed to be a safe space, not one where there is no refuge. My work has focused on crowdsourcing anonymous personal stories of sexual and gender-based violence using technology, which can geotag these stories and make them available in open source format for everyone to use. My experience is that it democratizes access to information. It makes visible a highly taboo topic like sexual and gender-based violence. It allows one to begin dialogue without confrontation and encourages building trust with institutional stakeholders, because an individual or a community can demand accountability and discuss possibilities and options using evidence-based data. Whilst digital technology has the ability to accelerate progress, connect people, provide relevant information, build capacity, and drive accountability, our unconscious bias and socio-cultural norms can make it exclusive and biased. So we need to be intentional in how we develop technology and related policies in an inclusive manner to bridge the gap in inequality, leave no one behind, and drive sustainable change. So here are some of my recommendations. Make access to the internet and digital devices a human right. Treat the internet as a public good and take immediate and long-term action to bridge the gender, locational, and disability digital divide. Ensure that women and young girls are able to access high-quality formal and informal education to be able to take part in the decision-making process related to scientific developments, mainstreaming inclusive technology and innovation policies. Incorporate the tools of feminist analysis, especially intersectionality, into the creation and evaluation of policies and programs in order to target those furthest behind. Provide disaggregated, timely data at the national, regional, and global levels to identify gaps and set plans to narrow inequalities, including crimes against women and girls. Commit to forms of governance where cities and their citizens, including youth and girl-led organizations and feminist and women's organizations, participate in decision-making on the planning of spaces and their management. Integrate all climate change and health policies, strategies, and plans with, but not limited to, the SDGs. These must include responses to safeguard and provide for the health of women and girls, including sexual and reproductive health, as well as strategies to end child, early, and forced marriage and gender-based violence. So if we need to have sustainable development, we need to put women and girls at the center of the digital technology and social development agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elsa Maria da Silva, for your forceful statement reminding us of the gender divide. Now, dear participants, you have all seen, and let me draw your attention if you haven't seen in the chat box, the guiding questions that we have presented to the panelists and to you as participants. I would like to give you a minute, a few seconds actually, to read them, and then also start the question and answer session. Before that, though, I am aware and very grateful of the participation of His Excellency Mr. Germán Rueda, Vice Minister of Digital Transformation of the Ministry of Information Technology and Communication of Colombia, who has kindly agreed to respond to questions and comments, and in particular, he will respond to the first of these guiding questions, which I read it, is what policies and strategies are necessary at the global, regional, and national levels to address the digital divide, including in relation to gender, age, geographical location, disability, and other determinants of digital exclusion. I think the Vice Minister is already with us, and so, Mr. Rueda, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Greetings for our moderator, Ms. Patolizano, and of course, Excellencies, all of you who are with us this afternoon. With regard to this question, what policies do we need globally and regionally to close this digital divide? I think we've heard a lot this afternoon in many of the statements which are part of this work, and talked about the work that has to be the government's work. Given that we have differences in location, gender, we have people with disabilities, and other important decisive factors causing divides. So we need to look into all of this. We've done this in Colombia, but we need to do this based upon an understanding that each group has their own specific needs. We can't assume that one project will meet all the needs of all our people. So it's very important that in terms of policies, strategies and projects, we have a differentiated focus. And everything the government does must bear this in mind. In all of our countries, of course, we have one-off, occasional needs, and we need to use this as a point of departure to cover all needs and close all gaps. In Colombia, I can talk about our experience, we have identified some groups with greater divides who we could empower in specific ways, as Minister Karen was saying, allowing them to have access to all opportunities in all regions. In terms of our policy, we are deploying different solutions, not only in terms of connectivity, but this is one of them. We want to reach all corners of the country with accessible tariffs, subsidized tariffs, free access in some places. And we also have initiatives alongside that aim, for example, at children. In the ICT ministry, we have a Women ICT initiative, which is made up of different lines, different dimensions, so that we can reach children, girls, and women, who may have different levels of knowledge and different needs. And with this, we are seeking to empower these women so that they can make a difference in their community, so that they can have access to the tools they need and to all these opportunities. On a one-off basis, in this pro-ICT Women initiative, with regard to gender, we are, in 2019, we created an initiative. We had a challenge for ourselves, which would ensure that women with specific needs, economic needs, cultural needs, educational and social needs, were addressed, so that we could decrease the gender divide. And we are trying to ensure that they have ownership, autonomy, independence, and they have tools which allow them to manage and value their own rights. And we are seeking to ensure that they can increase their own skills as well. We have a Girl Self-Esteem program. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this is a girl STEM project. In Colombia, very few women go into STEM areas, and we want to try and break with these stereotypes. And we are working on a project to do this. So we have the ICT ministry, but also the National Education Ministry and other government areas involved, including the presidency. So this, and we are also working with the Women, Youth and Childhood departments to incorporate these programs and show the importance of working with girls and women. We also have another example I could give you, another program, which is a center where we are trying to achieve connection, in a bi-directional connection between people who are alone using a technological platform. We have a large number of people with disabilities who we need to try to assist and support. So only in 2019 alone, we made over 5,000 calls, but then we have increased this hugely during the pandemic to over 500,000 calls to try and keep in contact with these people. We have other initiatives underway and policies. I'm not going to go into great detail about them, but we are helping people with disabilities so that they can use technologies. We're training them to use technologies to transform their environment, to connect them. We're providing free software for people with visual disabilities, for example, or hearing difficulties, so that they also have the option of using technologies. We have an art festival, for example, smart inclusive ICTs. And we have all kinds of initiatives of this kind linked with the Culture Ministry as well. So really the idea
further comments for later. We have now a few others who are requesting the floor, so we might, have a more lively exchange if we intersperse various interventions. Thank you very much. I see the first one to request the floor, unless the chair wants to jump in at this stage. No, maybe later. Is Brazil first, second the European Union, and third Cuba. So I give the floor first to Brazil, please.
No, it's okay. Madam President, Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, in the context of one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our history, Brazil, under the guidance of President Jair Bolsonaro, enhanced the social protection network and provided the necessary support to the most vulnerable to face the crisis. More than $65 billion were invested in social assistance policies from early childhood to the elderly. Digital technologies were the Brazilian bet to foster innovation in its social public policies, and it has decisively contributed to the continuous improvement of our social programs. Brazil implemented in record time the emergency aid, a grant for informal workers, small businessmen, self-employed, and unemployed workers from low-income families. The program, it's important to note, reached more than 69 million people, directly or indirectly, impacting 130 million Brazilians, almost 2/3 of the Brazilian population. A digital platform, an app, and a website was the main responsible to reach the group of beneficiaries that were not part of the government registries for social programs, including those invisible to the Brazilian state. The Criança Feliz program, for instance, the largest home visitation program for early childhood in the world, was also improved by digital tools. Brazil developed a new electronic information system, enabling 38 million home visits in 2020. Social programs such as food acquisition and cisterns were modernized by gathering data from the single registry and the Bolsa Família, which were also upgraded during the pandemics. Brazil reaffirms its commitment to the social development agenda with intensive use of new technologies and a central tool. The Brazilian government reaffirms its will to reduce poverty and extreme poverty. Brazil reiterates its willingness to exchange experiences and lessons learned to improve social policies. Thank you.
Distinguished delegate of Brazil. Thank you, and I take this opportunity to remind everybody that interventions should stay within the 3 minutes time, as you did very well. I have now on my list of speakers, as I said, European Union, and then Cuba, followed by Morocco. So now the floor is for the European Union.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Dear Madam President, dear Madam Moderator, esteemed speakers and panelists, I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states and intervene with some questions first of all, because I understand that the questions is the most important. We have seen and hear today a lot about how we can do this transition to the social transition in the digital divide world. So we have 4 questions. The first one is, how can we fix the significant digital divide that currently exists between and within regions and countries, as well as between genders and age? Here we are talking about the youth and the older persons as well. We also heard that there are marginalized groups that are overrepresented in the offline population, which is disproportionately made up of women. We just heard the panelists, people in rural communities, people living in poverty, persons with disabilities, and older persons. But how can we fill exactly this gap? The limited accessibility, but also the low digital literacy. In the EU, for example, we have a program to fight this digital literacy now. But then we turn into the young people. And we know that if young people represent almost 1/4 of the online population, they often lack job-relevant digital skills, which are required to do this transition to the labor market. What is the best way to build the digital skills of young people to boost their employability? And also, just to mention, there is a new trend. There are these platforms, or gig work as they call it. They are the platforms where young people are mostly employed as individual contractors. So how can we fill the gap in their access to adequate social protection? What kind of protection? And finally, I want to conclude that for the EU, the recovery from COVID-19 has to be fair and inclusive. The recovery should go hand in hand with the promotion of human rights, gender equality, women's and girls' empowerment, and the full enjoyment of all human rights, good governance, and peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. It is important to develop increasingly more equitable, human-centered, and competitive digital societies with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development being the roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Tisvi, Delegate of the European Union. I have now the pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Chair of the 59th session of the Commission on Social Development. As the report of the Secretary-General says on the priority theme, technology is a way of eradicating and escaping from poverty and generating social inclusion and employment. However, due to the current international unfair order, the digital divide continues to deepen between rich and poor countries. To increase access for all to these technologies, which is one of the elements we're discussing this afternoon, we need to eliminate obstacles faced by developing countries. ICTs and their gains must be shared, and there must be greater international cooperation for developing countries, otherwise the digital divide will not be closed. There must also be no further unilateral coercive measures. These have a very negative effect on development, ICTs, and access to these services. In the case of Cuba, my country, the main obstacle to increase access for people to these technologies is the economic, trade, and financial blockade imposed by the United States government. For example, it prevents my country from benefiting from facilities in connecting to the internet and makes it difficult to offer better access to services. In 2019 alone, until March 2020, the blockade caused great damages to Cuba in terms of around $64 million financially. Nevertheless, we're trying to progress towards access to ICTs and put these to the economic, social, economic and social development of our nation. This is a priority for us. It's a strategic sector with a great impact for the socio-economic development of our country and the quality of life of our people. We have an integral policy to increase the ICT skills of our people. This involves also cybersecurity, access to and use of these technologies. We have made progress particularly towards electronic government, so as to strengthen the link between people and public institutions, and as well as e-commerce to increase efficiency of our development. We are continuing to make progress and will continue to do so and continue our efforts insofar as our position as a small developing country allows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. I have more speakers now. Morocco, followed by Senegal and the Dominican Republic. So I give the floor to Morocco, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Madam Chair, again, my delegation would like to congratulate you for assuming the chairmanship of CSocD and wish you and the Bureau, as well as the Secretariat, the best of success for our deliberations. Madam President, it is widely recognized that digitalization and connectivity are the most powerful tools for implementing the UN 2030 Agenda and Africa's Agenda 2063. It is a key driver. This was a key driver for my country to establish a digital economy as a gateway towards sustainable development and to keep pace with global transformations. In Morocco, digital applications are driving socio-economic transformation, increasing productivity and distribution of goods and services, opening up new income opportunities, and enhancing connectivity between national economy and the international world. The landmark initiative launched by Morocco called Digital Morocco 2020 aimed to accelerate Morocco's digital transformation. The overall objective is to start a new dynamic of transformation in the digital economy sector as well as in other sectors, and to make the human resources the cornerstone of the digital transformation. In 2019, Morocco engaged with a broader partnership with many international actors, including with the World Bank, to support digital transformation of the economy with a view to harness the potential of digital technologies to enhance entrepreneurship, productivity, and e-government initiatives, and to drive innovation and comprehensive development. Finally, Madam President, let me quickly react to the panel by underlining two key points for my delegation. First, the crucial importance of digital inclusion, including for persons with disabilities, migrants, and young girls. For example, for young girls, their inclusion is key as we build their future by providing them the required digital accessibility and technological facilities to develop their skills and prepare for their future employability. Besides, Madam President, millions of girls affected by the current pandemic might never come back to schools due to the lack of access to digital devices. And this should be of a big concern to all of us at the international level. And quickly, number two, the current international context marked by the pandemic and as what we call the contactless world, confirmed the necessity of digital transformation. The current situation has accelerated the paradigm as evidenced by the marked shift in spending towards digital businesses. So thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me proceed to the next. We have six speakers, 4 countries and 2 NGOs. So next is the distinguished delegate of Senegal. You have the floor.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup, Madame la.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Moderator. In Senegal, the digital sector plays a very important role. Indeed, it is one of the most dynamic sectors. Given this, we have a ministerial department dedicated to the digital economy, which is implementing the Senegal Digital 2025 strategy and serves as a catalyst for modernizing the economy and improving its competitiveness. This strategy and its plan of actions seeks to achieve internet for everyone and overcoming the gender divide in digital technology by establishing partnerships with women and strengthening girls' digital skills. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, these technologies have become an essential tool for population resilience. Hence, important programs and projects were developed by various ministries and sectors. In the educational sector, major innovations were made in order to be able to continue education through learning platforms. A education channel was also created, as well as social networking tools. Open digital spaces were strengthened, as well as Senegal's virtual universities. In the health sector, we have been using SMS technology to spread awareness about protective measures, as well as setting up a digital alert system. There was also a virtual follow-up system for the pandemic. In addition to these sectoral developments, we have sought to strengthen our digital tools by modernizing the administration and bring it in online, in particular through the state's information agency, through a platform for digital governance, as well as a virtual salon for ministries. Fiber optic cable was also improved in order to increase accessibility of the internet. And finally, we have been promoting telecommuting and telework. It is essential to continue in this vein and in this pace, and to continue strengthening world partnerships for the resilience and well-being of all. I thank you.
Je vous remercie, Madame. And I will proceed with the speakers list. I wish everybody stays within the limits so that we can also hear back from the panelists if they have something they would like to respond, of course. So I have the Dominican Republic, followed by Argentina, followed by China. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Dominican Republic.
Gracias a la mesa que preside este panel.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. And thank you very much to members of the panel, as well as ambassadors and delegations. Our current context has shown us the high levels of inequality and poverty, particularly with regard to ICTs. This is an important tool to combat the socioeconomic ills caused by the pandemic, particularly for groups who are most vulnerable. 66% of the population in the Dominican Republic has access to ICT at an acceptable level, and connectivity levels are low as well. These are a human right, though, undoubtedly, so we need to make progress in solidarity and ensure that we increase access and digital skills amongst the most vulnerable households. Our focus is to ensure that all people have equal opportunities for productive social participation. We want families to be able to play their role. And from the government, we are promoting actions to make more efficient use of what we have available and improve availability of ICTs so that people can take decisions under this new reality, given the constant external shocks our country is facing. From the main organ for social protection of the government, which I belong to, we are undertaking internal transformations to strengthen our institutionality. It's all about making the most of the flow of information through the physical to digital to physical network. We want to ensure that the demands of the population are met in real time in a digital way, whatever their situation. We wish to thus meet our commitment to our citizenry. We are delighted to see this kind of meeting where we will share our best practices in the use of technologies to ensure that these families have autonomy and empowerment. This is an excellent way to ensure that we cooperate between governments and have closer links so that we can all achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The efforts of our nations to promote more inclusive policies which do truly reflect an open data, open governments and open decision-making based on continuous interaction with our people are crucial. We urge that there be continued improvement of social protection, and we are establishing mechanisms to ensure better citizen participation and in public management. We want to ensure also access to education and public services, as well as labour inclusion, and the chair interrupts.
Usamos a nuestra transición socialmente justa hacia el futuro.
We are promoting social inclusion in this way. Thank you very much.
I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Argentina, followed by China and by the International Federation of Social Workers.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, moderator, chair. First of all, the delegation of Argentina would like to express gratitude to the distinguished panelists for their excellent presentations and this opportunity to share policies and measures implemented for social inclusion and digital inclusion. We fully believe that this is a duty of the state to guarantee that people have access to and use of ICTs so that they can use all the digital technologies and also have access to essential public services. We need to form templates for access to such infrastructure, including social inclusion and the use of ICTs as part of our human rights. One of the main objectives of our government for digital inclusion is to universalize access to the services of ICT services and ensure that we have public policies to generate well-being, inclusion and broaden rights for all our people. Decreasing the digital divide in the socio-economic and digital fields is one of the main axes of our work. In this vein, on the 16th of September 2020, Argentina launched our national plan for connectivity called Conectar, and its aim is to implement public federal policies to reduce the digital divide. The programme includes 4 main axes: development and building the 4th RSAT satellite, telecommunication services for over 100,000 rural families, broadening the federal fibre optics network and ensuring there is open digital access for over 80% of our territory, reaching 10 million households. We also want to update our National Centre for Data, which should allow us to broaden the services available, as well as our contingency policies. We also want to decrease the digital divide and promote inclusion, with particular emphasis on vulnerable sectors and marginalized sectors through our Wi-Fi network plan. We want to have free access to the internet for those in the most remote areas and across the whole of the country. Chair, finally, the Republic of Argentina wishes to underscore the fact that it's fundamental to universalize access to ICTs by fostering public policies which allow for a reduction of inequalities in the digital arena, as well as the gender divide, and improving human rights in this way, so as to reach more inclusive, just and equalitarian societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. And now I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of China, followed, as I said, by the International Federation of Social Workers, and lastly by Marie Knoll Sisters of St. Dominic. You have the floor.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you for the wonderful presentation by the panelists. I will keep my remark very short. And today we heard the opening remarks from a lot of the high-level speakers. One of the sentences touched me is that leave no one behind means leave no one offline. My question is that in face of a lot of the disadvantaged connections in the developing countries, how to improve the digital infrastructure. Now we have the poor access and affordability in the developing countries to connect with the internet. And I think only to close the digital divide, we can avoid the development gap between the rich and the poor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, you have certainly used your time in a very focused manner. And now I give the floor to the next speaker. I lost my list, excuse me for a second before I find it again. The International Federation of Social Workers. Please, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you, Madam. I am Hannah Burke. I am a student representative for the International Federation of Social Workers and a graduate student with the School of Social Work at Monmouth University. So my question has to do with ethics and the utilization of digital technologies. So my question for the panelists is, how can civil society policy as well as government intervention strategies work to promote ethics in the usage of digital technology, specifically with regards to data collection, as well as the bolstering of polarization and extremism across the world? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. And I give the floor to the last speaker in our list, Maryknoll Sisters of St. Dominic, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Moderator. Thank you for this opportunity to pose question. My name is Marvin Misolas, and I'm representing the Maryknoll Sisters of St. Dominic, a religious NGO accredited to the ECOSOC. I have two questions. One is, how can we use digital technologies to help shift a post-pandemic recovery that focus on integrating climate change adaptation and resilience that is inclusive and assure socially just transition towards sustainable development? My second question is also with regards to ethics. As we have heard in the presentations and intervention, the digital technologies are tools and drivers of our collective global future. Inequalities are not just economic, but also the hierarchies of our values. How can we address the ethical dimensions to ensure that policies and decisions are not only people-centered, but also planet-centered? I thank you.
Thank you very much. With this, we have concluded our question and session. And even though some were more statements than questions, we have gathered a lot of questions spanning from the last one, the ethical dimension, to more specific questions about inequalities and discrimination. And I would like to call on three of our panelists, and these are Minister Vargas of Peru, Mr. Zucker of Switzerland, and our panelist from Red Dot Foundation, Madame da Silva. I don't know if Peter Major is also with us as well, the keynote speaker, but if he is, I will be made aware and I will make sure to give him the floor. Madam Chair, if you agree, I would return therefore to Minister Vargas to begin with and give her the floor. Okay.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator, for giving me back the opportunity to answer some of these very difficult questions. I guess, as I said at the beginning, more than answers, we also have a lot of issues we are still dealing with. However, I would like to pose a particular experience to deal with the issue of how inequality can actually be addressed through how we bridge and how we start reducing this digital inclusion gap. And I would like to refer about a conditional cash transfer program we have in Peru. It's called Juntos. Juntos in English would be something like all together. And this program is actually using remote sensing based data to identify all the women that are part of this program And it has been very useful to identify not only these women that actually being paid every 2 months to help them raise their kids and motivate them to have them go to school, but also it has been very useful in identifying issues that require immediate attention. For example, violence, domestic and gender violence. And that's the way in which I think these kind of tools can actually keep building elements to reduce gender gaps. I mean, we start from a cash conditional based program. However, aside from complying what it's supposed to be doing, it's providing new opportunities to identify issues that need to be dealt with. For example, gender violence. In addition, the program has also been making progress towards financial inclusion because it's making women to access some opportunities in terms of a bank account or using digital accounts through their phones, for example. So this a very particular example on how a particular program can actually, aside from its goals, can be used to build up opportunities about how bridging up at different issues that are particularly important for women. Finally, I would like to take 30 seconds to synthesize what I think is the most important route throughout advancing some issues towards digital inclusion. I think we all need to really think about new ways to how we collaborate. We need to fulfill collaboration with new meanings now. It is the only way forward, I believe, and spaces like this are a way to keep working towards that direction. I think academia has a particular role in this direction, and I think they can also help us building the answers we are all looking for. Many, many thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I would like now to pass the floor to the distinguished representative panelists from Switzerland, but before that I would like to highlight how important is the point about cooperation, and the UN, of course, is here to provide the platform for all stakeholders to work together. Now, Mr. Zurcher, Excellency, you have the floor.
Oui, j'aimerais peut-être.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to get into one of the questions that was asked. I believe that firstly, infrastructure and effective digital services, ones that are affordable, as well as policies and regulations to support and increase universal access and affordable access for all populations to the internet are important. Persons and communities that are connected are more autonomous. This allows them to participate in development and in global markets, to access knowledge and important information, and it opens up new employment opportunities and community participation. Technological approaches that will allow us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals more quickly and more effectively, as well as of course, improving access to basic services and financial services in particular for vulnerable persons who otherwise risk being left behind, by helping the public and private sector to provide accessible, transparent, and affordable services. For example, information on healthcare measures or mobile banking apps. Cooperation can thus promote inclusion. In order to be able to use digital technologies and the internet, people need digital skills. This is also a very important element. Individuals must be protected from the risks of the labor market, for example, by providing ongoing opportunities for development and skills development through training at all ages, as well as strengthening equal opportunities in education and protecting employment. These are some of the principles that we have been following with conviction, protecting individuals from labor market shocks by supporting job seekers to find new economic areas of activity, while of course still ensuring that personal efforts are made to find jobs. Not all social systems have been in the same position to meet these new challenges, and social protection systems must not become an obstacle to new forms of work. I think this is also important to note. Ideally, they should be well adapted to facilitate all forms of work. This is how Switzerland sees this development that we are in the process of seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, and now I will give the floor to Ms. Elsa Marit Silva. You have 2 minutes, more or less, to address the
on the ground and using technology to crowdsource data on gender-based violence, I want to caution that just putting digital technologies out there is not going to solve the problem. We really have to invest in digital literacy skills and also in gender sensitivity, because if we don't reflect the diversity in our thinking or in our policies, we are not really going to understand the problem. The second insight that I have from my work is that data is very important. Take, for example, sexual and gender-based violence, which is so underreported. It does not even reflect the true nature and size of the problem in the official statistics. So technology can bridge that gap, but do we also make sure that the citizens and the women in particular have access back to their data? And that brings about transparency. Are we willing to allow that to happen, where we are willing to have these people participate fully in the processes, listen to them, and where they have a voice? So I would encourage everyone to think about these things, because we are in the 21st century. The problems are extremely difficult. Technology can solve a lot of problems, but we also have to make a lot of changes in the way we think and in the way we implement solutions. That's what I would like to put on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. I think we have only a few minutes, so I will yield my time and just say how much digital technology obviously are important to bridge the gap, and also how when almost half of the population doesn't have access or opportunities to participate in modern society because it doesn't have access to the digital tools. And I would also like to highlight, of course, how this lack of participation can lead to very negative consequences in terms of disconnect between the civil society and the institutions, and lack of trust and social unrest. So how crucial this subject is, and we have to address it. And just let me add that DESA is here to support, of course, through the work of the Commission on Social Development and through all the work we do on the SDGs and intergovernmentally, the membership cooperation. With these few words and thanking all the panelists and the participants on my side, I would like to give the floor to the chair for her concluding remarks. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Pastorizano, for your moderation. It was very efficient work. You very ably guided our debate. Thank you. I think the only thing I can add to what you so well said is that not having access to technologies will just be an exacerbation of the differences between the richer countries, where almost everybody has access to technology, and the middle-income countries and the less developed countries, where access to technology is still today quite difficult. So we have reached the end of the high-level panel discussion on this priority theme, and I thank once again the Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs for having guided our discussion so skillfully. I would also like to thank the distinguished keynote speaker, the panelists, and the delegations, whose participation and contributions enriched our debate. This was something of a diagnosis, cathartic session today. We presented the problem and provided very valuable examples of actions that countries have undertaken in the face of the tragedy the world is currently living through. We hope that the upcoming sessions will allow us to make progress towards some proposals and measures. A number of countries did do this today: Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Switzerland, others. I think it's very useful for us to all listen to each other and hear all of these valuable examples. And I'm sure that we will all hear from our friends and partners in other states the kind of thing that could be applied in our own countries and territories and with our own people. So I would like to adjourn this session now by thanking everybody and thank the interpreters as well for the work that they have done. I would like to remind you that tomorrow at 10 o'clock the Commission will hold a ministerial forum on promoting multilateralism to realize inclusive, resilient and sustainable recovery from COVID-19 in the context of the Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development and its social dimensions. The Ministerial Forum will be held again on this platform. So once again, I thank everybody for having participated in today's session, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.